Good evening, everybody. Hello and welcome to the Blah. Alan Robson with you, of course, from the legend that happens to be the ghost historian. So thank you very much for joining me. Thanks for spreading the word, been checking out all the prattle online. Thank you very much. I know a lot of you are very concerned with trying to help us out as well, which is great. As long as we're having fun, as long as we're enjoying it, that's the main thing. Now, got a show for you tonight. Got a show for you. Castle Walls. Now, that's Tony's name for the show, which beats my version of it, which was the middle bit in Newcastle. Phil said, wow, Rosie's Bar. I'm in there all the time before I go to the match. I didn't have a clue about the history and 3 ghost stories attached to it, ? Absolutely. A lot of people believe that her cousin Bertie was murdered by gang affiliates, that Rosie herself may well have been dispatched for the same reason, and the person who took over the bar after that may well have been dispatched. So, and that's just one bar. And that was the first, pretty much, apart from a very rat up me trouser leg kind of back alley next to the castle walls. Most of you loved it. Thank you very much. And Melanie in the graveyard, you know, I mentioned that I saw something as if it was following Bushy and Tony through the lower part of the graveyard. Melanie said, when you were talking about that dark figure, there is a glimpse of something directly behind Tony when he moves the camera around, when he was at the lower part of the cemetery. So there you go. I'm not going crazy. It was from a distance. And you've got the whole hubbub of Newcastle directly behind where I was. Si loved it. Dynamite, great filming, great crew, loved it. Everybody doing what they should be to give us a great night. Brilliant. Thank you. Now, do you remember last week when I was telling you that there's a story of a woman who lived twice? And I said, the story's far too long, can't share it because you only got it like 10 minutes before I went on air with you last week. This is the picture that Brian sent in, because Brian's a good lad. There you go. Marjorie McCall, lived once, buried twice. Now, the story is back in 1705, because it's not all that easy to make out exactly what's written there. Lots of Irish folk failed over here to Britain, and Marjorie was one of them. And she caught a fever, and she died. A lot of people believed, even though there were a lot of other reasons you could die with a fever, a lot of people thought it was cholera. Now, cholera was going around at the time. So they ended up burying her that same afternoon so as not to spread it. She was buried wearing a valuable ring because they couldn't get it off her swollen dead fingers. And this made her a target for body snatchers, the resurrectionists. And the robbers did show up that night. They dug down in the freshly piled in earth. They opened her grave casket and they started trying to pry the ring off. Once again, even in death, her fingers were too swollen. So they got a knife and they went to cut it off. And when the knife touched her finger and cut into it, Marjorie woke up from the coma that she was in, sat up and screamed. One man supposedly dropped dead on the spot. Marjorie then climbed out, went home. The husband heard a knock on the door, a very specific knock. And I don't know about you, but some people know their partner's knock. You know, something of that sort. And he said, oh, that's just like your mom's knock. Went to the door, had a heart attack, eventually died of it. And he was buried in the grave that Marjorie had just climbed out of. She went on to remarry. She had several children in a place in Ireland called Lurgan. She lived once and she was buried twice. And this is one of the reasons, you know, we said when we were doing that Newcastle trail. Make sure you look up, because there's all kinds of stuff up. It's but you're too busy like doing that. Look up, look around. There's stuff, and some of it's really very, very special. Some of that stuff. Phil loved all of the banter with night owls and locals and the visiting Scots. He said, had me laughing. Fran said, it's just the coolest show ever. Thank you very much. Phrases and sayings. Oh, yeah, we got some of that going at the present time. Now, ages ago, some of you asked, we know we did Geordie, and on the back of the Geordieisms that we did, some of you said, well, why don't you tell us what all of our sayings mean? And there are thousands of sayings. So this week on Robson's World, we have What You Talking About out today. It's all about sayings. And every day we use genuinely 50 to 80 sayings, phrases, and where those phrases come from are fascinating. Sometimes we're using things that Nazis have said. Sometimes we're saying things that Vikings said, and the stories behind them of massacres and murders. And this is also a one about bands. If you're into your music and you want to find out the name of the band that's named after a woman who wiped out her entire family with an axe, what band's that? Well, there's 1,000 of them, and they're all in that show too. We've really gone to town. If you like your words, if you like your, if you're in the middle of a conversation and somebody will use a phrase to you, you'll be able to say, but do you know where that comes from? And you'll have all of the answers. And then there's this. This is the other part, the Beast of Bodmin and the Pirate Trail. Now, when the superstar who was Brian Moore, the radio presenter, when he was doing his thing, I would regularly bump into him and he'd say, oh, I'm going back to visit my family. And again, into Cornwall and Devon. And he says, you've got to come down. You've got to, if you like your ghosts, if you like your pirate stories, you've got to come down to that part of the world, because it's the centerpiece. And we always thought it was up here. I went down there and it blew my mind, blew it. So many amazing and incredible stories. And if you're looking for 5 or 6 hours to just immerse yourself across the week and escape from everything, they're the boys. They'll do it for you. 2 crackers this week. And tomorrow we've got a £1 special coming out. So if you just want to give it a try and see what you think, it's a bit piratical as well. So I think you'll like it. Hi, Alan. My boyfriend says that he went to school with you and you were a right hairy. His name was Eddie, and the only Eddie I can think of is Eddie Best. So if it was Eddie Best, send him me very best. Now, is there anybody that went to my school that that became famous? No. Yes. John Marley, a guy called Bainbridge. Now, I'm not into me rugby, but apparently Steve Bainbridge, he played rugby for England, apparently, and he was very, very good. So respect to him. He was in a year younger, a couple of years younger than I was, but he went to the same school. So the thing that I thought, because you've mentioned that and brought back memories of at least somebody that I knew, because we caught a picture from somebody in Benwell that I used to hang out with, which is bizarre. Just makes you feel even older. However, I thought I'd show you some pictures of some friends of mine. And weirdly, each one of them kind of has a story. Excuse me. Let's get into it. Oh, excuse me. Felt something going down the wrong way, and it's gone all the way now. Who's this? Hairy boy. That's Tony Blair. Now, Tony Blair took part in a Children in Need show that I hosted from the Leisure Centre in Sunderland. And I ended up putting a custard pie in his face while wrestling. It was playing a game. I think we used to call it Pirates when we were at school. You had to get from one side of the gym without touching the floor. and you had people chasing you, trying to knock you out. Beginning to wish that I'd knocked him out even further. Who's this? Who is this? Did you go to school with him? It's Matt Baker. And Matt went to college in Durham and was a hearty night owl. And when he came to the radio station to see me, he was saying that him and his mates used to all gather around listening to the ghost hunts and listening to the show and laughing and roaring, and thought it was great. So he's one of ours. So there's Matty. And who's this? I think you'll get this one. Yeah, Ross Noble. And that's how I remember him the very first time. I gave him his first gig at the Playhouse in Newcastle. That's sadly no longer there, up beside where the Hancock Museum is. And he said, Alan, I can juggle. You're putting a show on. Can I come and juggle? And I said, if you want to come and juggle, Ross, you can. So he came and he juggled, and he was great. And it was, what a career he's had since. Still doing amazing. Tremendous. Let's see how many of these we can get to. Here's another one. Butter wouldn't melt in Dexmouth there. There's Declan Donnelly. And again, him and Ant used to love the ghost hunts. I don't think we've got a deck shot. We should have had, but we haven't. Recognize anybody there? Everybody with a little trophy. Kid on the left-hand side. It's Alan Shearer, who I've a love-hate relationship with. This one, bit harder, this one, I think. Who's that? Now, this guy, when I first started doing the I did American TV series across about 3.5 years, became the most watched program of its kind in American history. Scariest Places on Earth, it was called. And this guy was working on the first show that I got involved with, which was at Chillingham Castle. Perfect link for this year's Halloween. And this guy was working behind the scenes, moving stuff around, a fixer. And we became good friends. He is Cy from the Hairy Bikers. That's Cy before the beard, before the motorcycle hemorrhoids. That is Cy. And this one, who's he? Looking at his chin, it looks like somebody's cuffed him, mine, doesn't it? And that is Robson Green, who filled in on a panto that I'd written, and he came in playing the lead man because he's one of his mates, Joe Caffrey, was ill, and he came in, didn't know any of the words. One of the funniest pantos I've ever done because of exactly that reason. That's Tim Healy, but he's not the youngest Tim Healy you've ever seen, but it's the guy front left. It's Matt from the 1975s. Tremendous. Who's a diamond? This one you'll get straight away because he hasn't changed since he was a rather posh high school chap. That's Rowan. Now, this lady I love, and she's kind enough to love me back. It is, recognize her? Little girl, little baba, called Cheryl, who is just a star. And I couldn't find any immediate little kidsy ones of me, but this one cropped up when I typed in young Alan Robson. My goodness. Hairy boy. We'll leave that alone. Escape while you can. I'll crack on. Sue Brown says, I love the history side of what you do. Well, that's 50% of it. Mandy says, looking sexy. Doesn't glaucoma play tricks on you? Nasty. There's a picture. Oh, from the pub. Glyn said that you took a photograph in one of your ghost venues, and afterwards you saw that you'd captured a full-bodied entity. Can you show us it again? Well, I can, because I've sent it over again. Here it is. And you would look at that probably 100 times. You know, when I say sometimes you can see spirit more cleanly in reflection in a looking glass. And they've said that since the 1500s. And it's absolutely true, because Tony took this shot in a mirror, which is why you get the light glare. And if you look through the glare, you can see my hat. I'm sitting at the window. And that's the window that we got all of the activity on. And if you look straight at the back, center right, you'll see a door frame. In the middle of that door frame, there is the image of a woman wearing a long dress and a white blouse with her hair tied back. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, but it is clear as day, and there's nothing in that particular place that could possibly resemble what is actually standing there. Look close at it. There it is. Brilliant. Right. So, Glyn, now you've seen it. Brenda, heading to Chillingham. Us too. Ray says, looking well, Alan. Take care. Thank you. Jordan says, still loving everything you do. Thank you. Riley. Last week we showed some pictures, and I knew the name. And you know, because I'm busking a lot of the picture thing. I know what they are and I've put them on, but I'm busking that I can remember 80 stories of 80 pictures. That's essentially what I'm doing every week. I have got it very badly wrong. I remember the death masks where I got all the wrong people. And you were kind enough to always put me right. And I can rely on you for that. In this case, it was a woman who was feeding this big, funny-looking bird. And I did know the name of it, and it completely went out of my head. However, Riley said that bird that the woman was looking after during the war, when all the animals had to leave the zoo, wonder who got the tiger, was a shoebill. There you go, a shoebill. Jenny says, my mum worked for Kodak in 1956. You know, you were talking about how you used to have to take you'd take pictures on a camera, and you'd end up having the film, and you'd have to take the film in to get it developed. Blimey, technology. Also, Alan, this past week, I was in a hotel in Stoke, and the girl walked in on me while I was having a shower, changed the towels, and just walked out again. Didn't say a word. Well, I must admit that there was a case, and this is Inverness, and it wasn't all that long ago. I was lying naked on the bed, and a chambermaid walked in eventually. Anyway, and Brian says, Newcastle Trail, 100% amazing. Because of my job, I've got to go down that street to get to Newcastle United. I never noticed that post box before. And he sent a little picture of post box. Too late to go on the show. And another amazing show. You really are the best in the business. Thank you. Also, thanks for your suggestions for ghost hunts as well. We're getting a lot of them coming in for various places. I always want to do new ones. I know we've done a few replacing shows, if you know what I mean, but I always want to do new ones. And I've got a few new ones, but some of them are quite far away. But we'll get there. We'll make them happen. And anyway, so thank you very much for all of your suggestions. The other day, I was walking across Middlesbrough Centre, and somebody from his white van made a suggestion to me. Kent, I think that's what he shouted. And Adam also has been on. He's got a load of ghost tools, and he's open to an offer if you fancy them. He's offered them to us. We've got a ton of tools, but thank you anyway. But if anybody would like them, rods and all kinds of fancy stuff. And also, last week you loved looking at some of the sweeties, because we had a look at the Ket last week, and it's led me this week to get into other things. How many of you are old enough to remember "We are the Ovaltines, happy boys and gals"? Ovaltine. Do people still drink Ovaltine? There was another malty drink. What was the malty drink that I had? Horlicks. Horlicks, I seem to remember being an expensive posh drink when I was a kid. Then how many of you remember this? Keep Britain tidy with a little lion. But when it comes to foodstuffs, I thought I'd kind of go to town a little bit with it. Do you know the very first time that Coca-Cola was sold, what did it come in? Now, most of you will say, oh, that very fancy bottle that became iconic. No. Oops. Flash on, flash off. There it is. Delicious, refreshing, from Atlanta. Coca-Cola to dispense. You had to buy it from a pharmacy. And then there's, look at this lot. Shredded wheat. Ricicles or tricycles is nicicles. Or is it the other way around? Frosties. Great. Golden nuggets. Do you remember those little variety boxes? There's one on the very top shelf there. Special K that nobody wanted. Everybody wanted the sugar puffs. Or the little chocolate Rice Krispie ones. That was cool. Cornflakes. And you're looking down, you can also see Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Tizer. Now, you see, in the West End of Newcastle, we did Villa Pop, and we thought it was great. Sarsaparilla, dandelion, and burdock. Do you remember the flour graders as well? There's a little flour grader there that you could buy if you bought so many packets of flour. You sent off the coupons, and you could buy a little plastic flour grader. And you had jam that had what I would describe as politically or racially sensitive imagery on the packet. Oh, holy, look at this. Purcell, Tide, Drift, Fairy, Lux, Pop-Tarts, Ready Breck, Puffed Wheat, Cocoa Krispies, Gale's Honey, Frey Bentos, Fanta, Nesquik. If you can't afford a proper milkshake, Nesquik will do. If you like kind of dusty drink, if that makes sense, because there's always like flirters and Brillo pads, fairy snow. There was one type of soap powder that when I was sitting on the wireless, a soldier from Germany rang in and said that they use a soap powder called Omo, OMO, and apparently the women, the wives and girlfriends of the soldiers who were there, if ever they wanted to have F-buddy sex, they would put a packet of Omo in the front window, next to the front door. OMO, on my own. In other words, the husband or the boyfriend's away on maneuvers. If you want to come and have a few maneuvers of your own, I'm waiting. Come and see me. Now, this is a little bit before our time, but it's just nowadays an awful lot of people shave their private areas. Back in the day, it was a status symbol to have a very, very bushy V, to such a degree that he put one on his face. And these things are called merkins, and they're pubic wigs, just in case you're feeling a bit baldy around the necessary areas. There you go. Das Smarties, Munchies, Heinz soup. You still cannot whack Heinz, can you really? Ribena. It was dear then. It's dearer now. Keep them coming. Look at all of these. Robbins Bar, Nick's Digestives. A few of them, I think, are quite American. And you've got this one. Tins of beer. Do you recognize any of them from back in the day? Genesis. Stella Artois. Kind of Stella, man. This was my drink of choice back in the day. Bottle of dog. It's hard to believe because I can't cope with it today. But when I was a kid, it was like 9-10 bottles of dog to get me over the edge. And then there's this one. How many of you remember this? It's the one you've got to come back for. McEwen's Best Scotch. And I did the voiceover for that back in the day. There was myself and Robbie Coltrane working for Saatchi and Saatchi in London. They brought me down by the train to like the Big Smoke and put us in a studio. And Robbie did all the Scottish voices. I did all the northern voices for, well, it was one voice that covered Cumbria, Northumberland, North Tyneside, South Tyneside, Wearside, Teesside, and North Yorkshire. McEwen's Best Scotch. It's the one you've got to come back for. The start of a voice that stayed in the North all my working life, which is something to be proud of, I think, anyway. Let's crack on. Right. Paul, I love your frank replies. Try this question. Did you have any kinks? Did you have any kinks in the bedroom? I did try the luminous condom thing. You used to be able to get condoms that lit up in the dark. And there's an American film about them that's really quite funny. I'd be in the bedroom, girl walks in, should see her face light up. But anyway, there were also, funny, I was just talking about this to somebody earlier on, Flintstone condoms. The condom was just a condom, but the teat, the little bit on the end, had Fred Flintstone's face, Barney Rubble's, Betty, and Wilma. And I'm guessing that on entrance, Fred shouted, Wilma! And on coming out, probably Yabba Dabba Doo, I'm guessing. Anyway, I was just wondering what Bushy would use, because he's got to the point now that he wouldn't have any sex life at all if it wasn't for pickpockets. Anyway, Tina's off to Chillingham. Thank you very much. She sent some Chillingham pictures that Tony hasn't put on, so I'll wait till he does. She sent a picture. For those of you that are Chillingham heads and you keep an eye on what's happening at Chillingham, you may have seen this picture before, because I had. It's a picture where it's the grey courtyard, and in the very far corner on the right, there's somebody in a raincoat. It looks like there might be a couple of people behind them, but just merged into the darkness. And Tina was saying that she took the picture, and if she did, that's an amazing capture, because it has gone around. I've been aware of it for a good few years. And I think it's a person. Now, is it a real person or a dead person? Well, I don't know, but I think it is a person. Was it another ghost? I don't know. But Tina says there was nobody there when she took the pic. This one, I just wanted to say to the Thompson and the Idle family, I was at a funeral of a regular Owl listener. I was told about it, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, because, as you know, I'm always heading off one place or another. And the lady's name was Anne-Marie, who passed over. And it was just lovely to meet you all, and I'm so sorry for your loss. She's on to a better adventure now, and we wish her well in that. I might be in trouble because it was me who caught the wreath. Also, Fiona said, at the end of your trip last week, you looked really hammered. Because I was really hammered, and we had to walk a fair way to get to where we were parked. And Bushy did a great job of logistics. That was his role last week. And when I got home, pretty much everything that still worked was aching. So yes, I'm quite right. Pauline saw a ghost. Now have a listen to this. You know, we were doing when we went down the main street of Chinatown, Stowell Street. We mentioned that Penfold post box with the acacia leaves symbolizing ancient pagan things. Amazing. She said she was working at a show that I was hosting, the Rolling Stones at St. James's Park. And she said, I had to be there for 6:30 in the morning. And as I was walking along Stowell Street, I saw a man in a black uniform with a black hat leaning against the post box. It was about 60 yards from where I was. When I got to the post box, he just disappeared. So, we said it's an unlikely haunted place, but there's somebody that's seen something there, whatever it was. Julie has split from her boyfriend of 8 years. She says she's having an awful time of it, but he laid his hands on you, Julie. So that's it. You just don't even think about it. If they lift their hands once, they will accelerate and they'll hit you twice and they'll keep hitting you. So never accept it. Only one of my numerous wives has ever hit me. In fairness, it was with a Volvo, but only one. And also, love this, Graham. Alan, I'm addicted to Robson's World. Fantastic. Graham says, I have a particularly serious version of Crohn's disease, and the shows really help me. I'm in all day, and you can't just watch television all the time. You mentioned the theatre of the mind, and that's exactly what I have, and it's the best kind of entertainment. I love them. Each show, I wait for new ones every week. It's just the best. And he's trying to collect the whole set, like I used to do with vinyl albums back in the day. And just to try and make you feel a little bit better, although it probably won't, because a sore backside is a sore backside, whichever way you dress it up. But there's an awful lot of famous people who have had essentially bum issues, and there's no nice way of putting it. King Edmund Ironside was killed when a soldier got hold of him, bent him over, and stuck a long sword up his backside. King Edward II, the son of Edward Longshanks, the Hammer of the Scots, who ended up catching and killing William Wallace. He was sitting on a toilet when somebody hiding in the lavatory thrust a red-hot poker up his bottom and singed his junk. Rectum, nearly blew his balls off. Anyway, Samuel Pepys and Hitler were both extremely flatulent. I think that's where you get the phrase winds of war. Napoleon III had the squits, gonorrhea, dysentery, Crohn's, and bladder stones. So you're in fairly good company. So fingers crossed you're feeling better soon. Jeannie and Luke's son has just started experimenting. They've used a word that I'm choosing not to use. It's the M word. Their son has just started experimenting with his portion. Let me just call it DIY. He's just started DIY and using the family towels to DIY on. Dear. And yeah, my dad stopped me doing DIY when I was young. He walked in once and he said, I'm going to have to stop this. And he put something in me tea, my penis. Anyway, Lee Maria says, look forward to our Tuesday nights. Thank you very much. And also Pat says, thank heavens you decided to do these audios, Robson's World. I have a whole raft of your shows, Alan. You keep me going. You're a dear friend who gets me through the night. And because you do what you do by collecting the Robson's World shows, you keep me going. So it works. Thank you very much indeed. And if it wasn't for people like you, I would not be able to manage. Simple. Paul went to Finkel Abbey. Great, Paul. Well done. I got a complaint about the rapture. Okay. And you keep kind of prompting me to go further and further and further. Naughty. Because I'm happy to go further and further, as you know. But anyway, this is what came in. And it didn't give a name, just gave an initial D. Okay. Don't joke about people's beliefs. Okay. The church burnt people alive for their beliefs, burnt them alive, hanged them by the hundreds of thousands across the world, by the million. They massacred millions of Muslims, fact, for their beliefs. Fervent Christians led their armies to kill 6 million Jews and even more people of color, gay people, anybody that's part of the binary refinery, wiped them out. The mentally ill, gypsies, travelers, all for their beliefs. Members of the church assaulted and raped children and continue to do so and just move their priests from church to church. I have no conscience whatsoever joking about the people responsible for all of that. If you want me to get into all of that, I had somebody ring me live on air, and those of you that have been with me a long time may remember this young man who rang up, who was raped once a week for 6.5 years by a priest in the Northeast. Eventually told his parents, eventually they got the police involved, eventually they brought it to the church's attention, and that man is still a priest to this day, never served a day in prison. So don't talk to me about don't have a go at people because of their beliefs. My belief is that there may well indeed, and I know there are many, many people who have beliefs in Christianity, Islam, Judaism, there are lovely people, Hindus, Sikhs, lovely people. But right in the heart of those faiths, there are extremists who ruin it for everybody. Everybody. And they ruin it for you, and they ruin it for me. Got no conscience. I'm going to keep good. If you don't like it, again, I shrug my shoulders and carry on. Right, Dan Day says this. Excuse me. The Ghost of Winter's Gibbet. And he sent a poem, and it's very good. In the year 1791, when air was cool and nights were long, came a man who brought much strife with 2 dark souls who shared his life. Winter his name, and Clark was his kin, 3 shadows steeped in mortal sin. Old Margaret Crozier, frail but wise, met her end beneath moonlit skies. They struck her down with ruthless hand, then fled across the wild moorland. But justice stirred with vengeful breath to chase the ones who dealt her death. They walked the miles to Elston Hill, where Gibbet stands so cold and still. They took young Winter by the throat and hung him high with fraying rope, his lifeless form a warning cast to those who walk a wicked path. Now when you pass that haunted sight, beware the gleam from Winter's knife, for though he's gone, his ghost may tread where the rope still sways above the dead. Isn't that good? Arthur Fischal wrote that. Brilliant. Also, on the back of the Christian thing we did last week, not about what I've just read out, Roy says, what a great world we would have without fundamentalist Christians or fundamentalist Muslims or fundamentalist Hindus or fundamentalists anythings. Heather, brilliant show, Alan. I really enjoy it. Keep it up. I will. Andy, brilliant shows, Alan. Thank you. Jed asks where ponce comes from. It comes from a French word, pensière. Pensière. It's when we had French kings, because we were ruled by the French, William the Conqueror onwards, we were ruled by the French. Pensière means somebody that lives off other people, prostitutes or selling child sex to pedophiles. Pensière, ponce. And if you mix that with Alphonse, a word that means kept man or pimp, I always say that it usually takes a couple of things for for something to catch. Someone who sells any kind of homosexual sex of any kind back in the day, a ponce. Sometimes it's been used for people who are camp or effeminate, but that's not really where it comes from. But it comes from the French, poncier. Richard just found out that his wife, Marie, is pregnant. Never thought she would be, he says, because in recent years we've been trying really hard, but I was told by my doctor after tests that I had a low sperm count. How about that? Well, congratulations. Alan is such a good name for a little boy. So congratulations, Richard. And Marie, good luck with all of that. I hope it all comes out well. And it's a thing that you don't realize, that when you start being able to reproduce, you are creating every time 3.5, well, not you ladies, you are the recipients, but we gentlemen produce 3.5 million sperm. 3.5 million sperm. You get on in age till you become my kind of life, and you end up with a sperm count of about 3, and 2 of them have got arthritis. Anyway, Jill asks if I'd do another panto. She loved the ones that I put on. No, probably not. Purely and simply because it ties you down, and it's the only thing I'd be able to do, because you've got to be there for the matinee and the evening show, and you've got to be there 6 days a week, and it's heavyweight. So no, essentially. Just before I came on, there was a film on television, and it starred Roy Castle, Donald Sutherland, Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and Alan Freeman. Now, to me, and I know a lot of you have views of who you think your favorite DJ is. I've never considered myself as a DJ. I'm a broadcaster. And that's not being posy or posh. It's just, I'd never really sat there just playing records, apart from the hot and heavy. But that was a long time ago. But as DJs go, Alan Freeman, to me, was the greatest DJ of all time. The stuff that he did with rock music, mixing it with classical music, was genius. And he did it every Saturday afternoon, and he was amazing. Amazing. He forced people, because it was so good that even if they didn't like rock music, they would listen to that show. And he just mixed the rock with incredibly cool classic riffs, proper orchestral pieces, just amazing. He did a thing with Bomber from Motorhead mixed with the 1812 Overture, and it was like chin on your chest stuff. Just glorious. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention it. In the film, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, if you're wondering what it was. Now, the witch grave. Do you remember when we were going around the castle walls and we couldn't find, because it was pitch black, there's supposed to be a stone. It's only about so big, and it just had the word carved on it, witches. And many of the witches that were hanged on the town moor were placed there. Well, this is where it's at. That's the castle wall. And this is around the back side of the church. And you see the bit of grass that hasn't actually got grass on it. That's where the witches were placed. They're in the ground just there. And it said, apparently, now Tony just sent me this, and I haven't got the name of the person who sent it in. So if it was you, thank you very much indeed. Said that the grass sometimes grows there, but it always just gets patchy and disappears. Doesn't matter where. If you leave it, nothing grows on that particular patch of grass. And the stone has long since been purloined, stolen, spirited away. But there is the grave. And thank you very much, whoever sent that in. Appreciate it. Louise says, how did you learn about sex? Oh, dear. A pamphlet, actually. A pamphlet. Me and my mates went into one of those dirty shops They used to exist. They don't exist now, but dirty shops. Down an alley somewhere, there was one along by the Duke of Wellington in Newcastle. There was a dirty shop down there. There was another dirty shop at the bottom of Westgate Road. And you'd go in there and they would give you pamphlets telling you about what sex positions you should try and stuff. And there was one book I remember called Sex Without Partners, all the things you could and should do. Not so much a pamphlet, more a handbook, if you know what I mean. Anyway, Marie and Craig said, loved the grisly trail of the castle walls. I couldn't believe that you were so blasé about rats. They savaged my dog. I am absolutely terrified of them. Yet they were running over your feet and running around your feet. How come you didn't jump? I have spent a bulk of my life in places with rats. Cemeteries, old buildings, churchyards, castles, cellars, all that kind of stuff. I have witnessed the best of rats, where they just run over your shoe and ignore you, like the ones that in Newcastle did, because some of them even had little Toon Army tops on. And I can remember when I was a little boy, though, my dad cornered one in our backyard. We didn't have a garden, just a backyard. And he said, oh, there's one in the corner. I'll get it. And from ground level, and I saw this with my own eyes, so I know it's true. From ground level, that rat jumped at his face and went over his shoulder, because he did that. It went over his shoulder. It ran across the yard, jumped up, almost running vertically up a wall, onto the wall and over into the house next door, where the two Bettys lived. And when you were a little boy, it was Auntie Betty and Auntie Betty. You had no clue. They were a couple. You just saw them as Auntie Betty and Auntie Betty. It's none of your business. It's still none of my business. Right, comments. Let's have a look at some comments, because I noticed they've been piling in. And thank you very much for doing that. Let me, let's just scan that back. And a lot of people trying to come up with ways to plug the show. Lee Maria says, I often hear Alan doing the voiceover for a well-known window company. Always makes me smile. Absolutely. Can I get away from it? I watched a channel do a stealth camp in the haunted woods at Chillingham. They got scared out of their wits when they heard a really eerie sound outside their tent. It was hilarious. There is, behind one of the trees there, as I'll point out when I'm there, there's two ley lines that cross like that. And when you walk into it, all the hair on the back of your neck goes up. Do you get in Chillingham free now? We are family. I don't believe so. Because of just by the fact that people go there, we kept Chillingham Castle going, because it was going out of business at the very beginning. But it is a brilliant place to go. Bit difficult if you're in Wheels of Steel, though, Adam, because lots of towers, and you will only be able to see obviously the ground floory bits, and that's probably the torture chamber and the tack room, the shop. You will miss a great deal. I don't think there's anything you really do about that. Right, Lee Marie, I'm sure Alan will do a fantastic show, so it'll be nearly as good as you being there. I'll make a point of it, Alan, for you, mate. Right, Lee Maria, it's funny, Steve, it's mainly towards the end when you get scared by what's going on in the woods. When I was there, my husband got pushed from behind and there was no one there. Oh, there you go. Brilliant. Well, then you're just talking amongst yourselves. I don't want to get into personal conversations because that's none of my business. Norman, I did the St. James's Stones concert at St. James's Park when I was a Polis. I was in the mounted branch, so I was on horseback the whole time. How about that? That's amazing. What a great memory. And Colin, there is an old film that stars Oliver Hardy and John Wayne. So strange watching it. I've seen it. And he still plays Oliver Hardy, doesn't he? But he's in like buckskins and a coonskin cap. Yeah, I love the old John Wayne. As an escape, it's a good one. Margaret, we used to have the Monief police on our street. Where the Monief police, I think she means mounted police, on our street. The Flying Kentuckian, says Sean, and he's right. That's exactly what it is. I thought it was from your mum and dad, Alan, when you creeped into their room to watch TV. Absolutely, under their bed. That was an education. Well, that was more of a life and death situation rather than an educational one. I wasn't going to climb out and go, any pointers, Dad? No, you don't do that with your mum. No, it's your mum. Because you see, if I looked at my mum and dad in the street, I could think, have they had sex? I'd look at my dad and I'd say, yeah, he's had sex. I'd look at my mum and say, not so sure about that. And Mal Craig, hi, Alan, would you ever consider numbering the cat balls just to rule out the same one going on? I suppose. I've no reason against it. There you go. And then Colin says, he does. The same. Oh, right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, you're just agreeing with kind of what I was saying. Right. So let's get back to the other bits because I have other bits. Hang on. Here we go. Right. Pictures. I want to say thanks, first of all, to Elaine, David, Lee Maria, Steve, who I consider my master sharers because you are proper sharers. Thank you very much indeed. Love the fact that you do that. And now I've just got a pile of just cool stuff. Then I'll give you a clue as to where we're going tomorrow night. 7:30, early start. 7:30 tomorrow night. 7:30. Okay, right. Tomorrow night, 7:30. Incidentally, somebody sent me this, and that's the image of the witches being hanged on the town moor, and of course that is the image that went around everywhere, but you can see there's a castle behind it. It was nowhere near the castle. It was on the town moor where there was no buildings around at all. This was sent in too. Like it very much, made me smile. McDonald's ought to remove the tasteless sign close to the crematorium. And the poster, McCrispy. Now, remember that sign a little bit later on because I've got another image that kind of fits nicely with that. These are some Chinese prisoners being killed because their feet aren't touching the floor. Their hands are tied behind their back, so they can't stop from their necks hanging without a rope, and they will all hang themselves doing that. This is Robin Williams offering one of our most famous statues, the Thinker. And it does look like he's on the toilet. He's offering him some charmin or whatever it is. Two Germans helping a French troop out of the quicksand, probably so they can shoot him. That's me, man. How about this? A Russian digging up the skull of some ancient creature in an ice floor. How about that? Amazing. Tragic times. Two slaves being forced to sweep the streets, and so they don't run away. They're tied to a big, heavy metal ball. Awful days. And it's when we were going around Newcastle, because we had slaves in Newcastle. Nobody ever mentions it, but we do. And we had a parade by people, many of them who absolutely believed that was all right. So fighting the same groups of people today as we did back in the day, like America did back then. That's the Ku Klux Klan. Same old BS. Same old elitism. This is justice. Because during World War II, of course, ethnic cleansing was a thing. He has two Jewish prisoners. Now the Americans had opened the camp up and they said that the prisoners could do whatever they liked with the German guards. And there's one with a rather large hammer about to do something to the guards. This is also a death sentence from back in the day, to bury somebody alive on an anthill. And that is precisely what that is. Talk about killing machines. When wars begin, why are we still not bright enough to make sure that they don't? These are people that their faces had been repaired. I think they can do a slightly better job now than they did back then, bless them. And how sick is this? This is what rabbits had to do. Well, had to do, or forced to do. We teach them how to smoke cigarettes. They don't have a choice. They smoke cigarettes until they get cancers or all kinds of health-related issues. Ridiculous. This woman looks like she's tied up. She isn't. She's pulling that boat along a canal. And men, women, and children had to do that if they lived that kind of life. Now, we're talking about war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. See it again, y'all. This young man had his picture taken just before he went to war. First World War. Fought for 2 years. Came back looking like this. Talking about war changing you? I think so. Love this. This is a hostel. Visitors must not snore. Those addicted to night noises can be transferred to floors 12 to 14 on application to the check clerk. So whichever end it comes from, we're not having any noises. This is kind of weird. The British recapture Holland, and this Dutch girl fell in love with a German soldier and refused to let him go, and she ended up being imprisoned with him until he was released a year later. I love this. Sid Klein's Fat Men's Shop. There's times in my life when I would have needed that, I have to say. Well, not everything fits the rounded figure. This was the equivalent of a bus before there were buses. People rode on the roof. Look at how many. Amazing. Come on. There you go. How about that? A German pilot who flew with his bulldog. I always thought that bulldogs were British, but obviously not. What's special about that picture, do you think? Well, that, for those of you who are into your rock and into your motorbikes, that is the world's very first Harley Davidson. Wonder how much that would be worth today. Quite something, I'm guessing. Now, you know, where we did the McCrispy, these are Russian officials looking at all that remained of the body of the astronaut that came back in their spacecraft. The spacecraft and the pilot burned up on re-entry. This is quite cool. This is the band Metallica playing at San Quentin prison. And they like their metal in prison, it seems. Now, what do you think this is? No word of a lie. This is a brass, freezing cold brass item given to young Catholic boys to stop them getting an erection. If you went to a Catholic school in Victorian times, 1860 to 1890, you were given one of these and you had to wear it. I'm guessing that over the years, thousands of people wore the same one. It was passed from boy to boy. It's nice that they put a few holes in there so that your testicles can breathe. I don't think it's anything that would arouse you to any large degree. A Scandinavian freedom fighter paying the ultimate price of fighting the Germans. This is one of the creepiest things you've ever seen. These are real corpses that have been embalmed, nailed to a wall in a church in Lazio, in Italy. Real people, they die, and they stick them on a wall. Never understand the rationale of those kind of things. Nazis again, another freedom fighter. And yet, we weren't a million miles away from it. British Army, Northern Ireland. People trying to go to church, busy day, having to walk past foreign soldiers on their soil. Now, you can argue, but they're British soil, soldiers on British soil. Well, yes, you can. But it's kind of like Paul McCartney's song, "Give Ireland back to the Irish, don't make them have to take it away." And in his song, he says, how would you feel if an Irish soldier stopped you on the street, said you can't go down that street? And that's exactly what was happening in Northern Ireland at the time. So I kind of see it from both sides. But I'm saying that, I love the Irish. I love the Celts, whether they're north or south. I love the Irish. Special. And it's kind of that Celtic thing. The north has it, north of England. Cumbria a little bit, but much more so Teesside, Wearside, Tyneside, Northumberland. Scotland's got it in spades, and Ireland. Oops, oh, we've seen that poor lady. Let's keep going. If I can. There you go. Now, I was made freeman of Benwell, which apparently allows you to drive your sheep all the way through the town. And here is somebody who is a freeman doing precisely that, which is pretty special. And then there's this one. This is a church. Christians piling into the church with the image of a hanging black man in front of the church because they didn't want anyone of colour going into the church. How very Christian of them. That was actually a school, but there was a chapel in the school. This is a trench. Children hiding in a trench during World War II. The modern world is not fair in a million ways. Some pictures you don't even have to say anything about. This is a man taking out his own appendix. Gave himself anesthetic, did the job himself. Now, many years ago, I mentioned that my grandfather, who was a coal man, was hired to bring the white whale that used to be on the wall of the Hancock Museum. It's still in their basement, from North Shields when they caught it in their nets. Can you imagine even thinking about how you'd get that on the back of a car? Just saw it and made me think. Thought I'd share it with you. Nearly there. I don't know what this is. It's women on their knees. I don't know whether they're all going to do their husbands a favour before they go to work. But apparently, the truth is that the women had to beg their husbands for anything that they wanted for themselves. And they had to get down on their knees to do it because men ruled the roost. Not sure I could see that happening nowadays. This is slave sheds in the 1940s. 1940s. There shouldn't have been any in the 1940s. There still were. Depends where you looked. Coming home from the war. Welcome home, Hector. Well done, him. You know, we've seen people that they put those earrings in that make their earlobes long and flappy, or they put a lump of wood in the middle of them Same principle. Still think it looks whack. What about these? Ladies, why'd you wear a pair like that? And you'd think, well, if they weren't ripped, maybe you would. 1432, those underwear. 1432. 1432. Hell's teeth. Not Victoria's secrets. Could have been Queen Elizabeth I's secrets, but amazing. Oops. What is that? Hang on, you just saw the flash of it before. What is that? That is the tunic of Archduke Franz Ferdinand after he was shot, that would eventually launch the First World War. Now, the thing is, the Archduke would have survived, but he was so obsessed about trying to look slim in his uniform, he was sewn into it, and they couldn't get the uniform off to save his life. And it cost him that very life. Drink Coca-Cola in bottles, but as you see, that's a swastika. Now, the swastika is a Hebrew symbol that was bastardized and stolen by the Nazis. That's obviously an American version of it. Why would it be that shape? This could be in any of the old streets in the West End. Young kids playing bows and arrows. They might be playing, not cowboys and Indians, they might be playing knights because the young lad has a shield and we all use dustbin lids as shields. We don't even have dustbins today. And there's an old nana coming out of a shop with a walking stick and a little bag. And she looks identical to the outfit that my Nana Robson, my dad's mum, she used to wear. She was a creepy old thing. One day I found her rooting around in my mum and dad's wardrobes when they were out. And my parents didn't even know she had a key. Cheeky out. I love this. Don't know how many of you can remember being able to go into places like HMV and sit in a booth and listen to a record before you bought it. But you could. I remember those JG windows. You could go in and have a listen to a piece of music. Happy days. May I listen to it before I purchase? Never get a chance to do that today. Oh, hang on, we're back to the bin man. What's this? What do you think that is? Well, there's a radiogram where you can play records, listen to the radio, chair, standard lamp, table to write letters, books, bed you can crash on, painting on the wall. It's Al Capone's cell in Alcatraz. He got a few special privileges with his power, didn't he? 4 men to be stoned to death. They're not crash helmets, but they need them. I love this. Look at those faces. Is there an unhappier bunch that you've ever seen? These are all male police officers in San Francisco about to hit the streets dressed as women because women had been increasingly sexually assaulted. So they dressed all the policemen up and stuck them out on the streets. And that is our pictures for this week. I hope you've enjoyed them. A few cracking images there. So there we have it. Only time left for me to give you a couple of clues as to where we're going tomorrow. And it's this is a one that Paul found for us. Bushy, cracking job. The clues are my mate, Mr. Baker, plus some boggy ground. Okay. My mate, Mr. Baker, and some boggy ground. There you go. And if I can just say to Pat, your little mail about Robson's World came to me at a time when I was at an ounce of a low ebb, and I thank you very kindly for it because it got me over the blip, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you very much. So, my mate, Mr. Baker, and some boggy ground, and until tomorrow night at 7:30 from everybody associated with the ghost story, from Hollywood McShane, from Bushy, we had Paul Craig, and from me, Alan Robson. Good night. God bless you. And I wish you well. Catch you tomorrow night. Look forward to it. Good night, all. All the very best. Bye-bye.